Questions and answers. Selim, here we are.
Let's start with the first one, which is what kind of bottlenecks do you find in the food industries? It could be machines or people.
It's a good one because one of my passions in life is the second level of the theory of constraints, and in the second level of the theory of constraints, you have to ask yourself: is this a good or a bad bottleneck? Bottlenecks are unavoidable. If that's true, why can't you choose them or avoid having bad bottlenecks in the system, right? That means that probably if one has the opportunity of choosing in one's process between it being a machine and it being people, it should probably be machines rather than people. In that way, you don't have the crazy pressure of working all the time, never stopping, exploiting the constraint best and so forth. But it's a good point because I've had quite a few examples where it's been people. For instance, we did find one of them where it was the butchers, people actually cutting up the meat, which led to making sure that they hired enough butchers to be able to meet market demand. In that case, it was just because they had a complex about thinking nobody would want to come and work in their company doing this work. Dealt with correctly with the right brand marketing and stuff, it turned out not to be a problem. Between machines and people, it's more likely to be machines. When it's machines, it's quite often those that have cook or ovens. By the way, it's true also in steel industry and other areas. Whenever there's an oven somewhere, it ends up being a bottleneck.
Second question is, how do we improve people-intensive meat packing plants to meet higher production goal while improving yield?
What I find unfortunate is that there's an attitude in the food industry which is that the direct labor, those with a knife out cutting the beef and stuff, right, are not capable of contributing in any way to the process of ongoing improvement. I don't think that's true, and I've proven it factory after factory by ensuring that those doing that work are given the opportunity to make proposals for improvements, and they will propose different kinds of knives, presenting the meat in different ways than it was before, and so forth. Normally, to improve that performance, you need to empower and listen to the people actually doing the work so that they can improve the process and become themselves more efficient. Okay, that's the basic answer. And it's very true in the food industry where people basically never ask their direct labor what they think they could do to improve, right? I've done this factory after factory. Suddenly, the person's been there for 10 years or 15 or 20 years. Nobody has ever asked them how to improve things. And they say, well, of course, what we should do here is add this or do that. So that's the number one. Number two is to make sure that you manage the flow. If it's, imagine there are, 6 people in a line, various stages of the cutting. Make sure that you apply the theory of constraints within that little process. Have a look in that case on our video about improving performance by 15% in 15 minutes, which is all about doing it on an assembly line for cars, but it will be similar. There will be one resource that is the constraint in that production line. You need to work out whether that's where you want it or not, and how you can improve the performance of that. In the production case that I mentioned, the takt time was 17.1 seconds, and it never varied. When it's in the food industry, the nature of the raw material coming in will make it, this time it's 16 seconds, this time it's 18 seconds. So you have to integrate that variability and make sure that variability is not clogging up the system or destabilizing the system, and that you have excess capacity in the various places to absorb the variability in the time per parts.
Let's go to another question, which is other webinar you talked about SMED.
Yep.
What about the process SMED? It's also applicable for the food industry?
Yes, it is. At least in some food industries, it's applicable. What is process SMED? Single minute exchange of die. It was born end of the Second World War. Toyota, Japan, they had only a few machines to make their first cars, and therefore they spent a lot of time changing over from one piece of tooling on a press to another. And so they would spend 4 or 8 hours changing over a machine, and then they would press a few parts for 10 minutes and then change over again. So they were spending all their time changing over, and this led to a fascination with how to reduce setup times, hence SMED was born. There's lots of good books written with photos, machine by machine, technology by technology, whether you make cars, whether you make whatever. Have a look. There's a lot of stuff out there about how you apply SMED to manufacturing, right? It's all written up. The further you move away from Toyota's example, the less people pay attention. Well, I've already described part of it, right? It's still very, very relevant, on the contrary. What is process SMED? Process SMED is when The thing to be changed over is a large machine with several stages, and the changing over of it will require many people, not just one. There'll be 2 people cleaning here, 2 people doing that, 3 people doing that, maybe a technician changing over that part of whatever. There's, between 6, maybe 10 people working or involved at one stage or another to change over this big machine from one thing to another. When you do that, it's therefore a little project, right? And you need to work out who does what when, and in an organized fashion, and make sure that everybody knows exactly what's going on for a number of reasons, including safety, right? And that's worth discussing with the people so they can try, what happens if we do it here? If we ask for an extra person at this stage, would that help or not? Can we change the tooling here? All that's very classic. And then there's the starting up. In the starting up, you find that people are wasting time and material because the first kilo is not okay for whatever reason. Okay, when you do that, you often find that one of the reasons it's not okay is that they're playing around with the settings on the machine, the speed, the viscosity of this, the whatever, before they're getting the right product out. It should not be playing around and checking. You should have a set standard way of setting up the machine. It should be the same from one team to another, and it should all be very standardized. And if you do that, you'll get speed, you'll get quality, you'll get reduced material yield. It will be a lot more efficient. Same idea as SMED, as I say, get your management attention to look at not just when the machine is producing, but when it stops producing, look at it and think, how could I improve this?
Okay, let's go to the next question. When you spoke about McDonald's, you said because of the French culture, the protein station would have far more items than elsewhere. What sort of products are these?
Well, all the proteins of a McDonald's, all the different types of meat. Selim, you did that with me. I think there were 16 different types of proteins in
At least, yes.
And there was a permanent fight between marketing and the restaurants to add or not add more proteins to the menu. What we had to do, we just had to make sure that the sequences were properly managed and the quantities, the minimum batch quantities of cooking of this protein were properly managed to ramp up in the beginning of a rush and to ramp down at the end of the rush. To make sure that they only cooked what was going to be consumed.
Okay, we have another question linked to McDonald's. Can you elaborate on the kitchen tray solution developed by...
Selim was with me when we did that, yeah. The model is being rolled out worldwide, but I don't know to what extent it's got to in the various geographies, so I don't know if it's going to be true if you go to your local McDonald's, if you'll see this or not. The model was based on the kitchen doing its thing and then somebody reassembling the order, the bits of the order, the items of the order, and putting them on a tray, and that tray getting to the client. The items were separated and then they were assembled to become a client order. When things got into a rush, and when there were several different outputs, such as the drive and the restaurant and stuff, they were stealing, cannibalizing food from one order to another. That's to say, there would be 3 cheeseburgers coming out. One that only needed a cheeseburger for the car waiting there, he would take it, even though that should have gone to the person who'd been waiting for 5 minutes in the restaurant. To avoid all this desynchronization, we proposed, and it was accepted, to start the tray in the kitchen. They would work order by order, tray by tray. The client order would start in the kitchen. No waste of time, no confusion, nothing missing. It was a great success because it had a huge impact on performance.
You spoke about change line, changeover, and SMED. And can you elaborate a little bit the importance of making machine easier to clean?
You sometimes wonder, if this isn't a thing because engineers don't do the washing up enough in the kitchen at home. By the way, it's worse in pharmaceuticals than in the food industry. You see the machine, you think that's just a horrible thing to clean. And nothing's been done, even though that machine's been there for 20 years, nothing's been done to make it easier. Not the tooling, not the lighting, not the sharp edges and stuff. It's just ridiculous. And it's not only a question of speed and making money, right? It's a question of health and safety. You can't clean properly a sharp edge. You can't make sure that there's no food left in this or that part of the machine because you can't see it and it's not accessible. Some of the classical SMED stuff of making sure that you can remove tooling and put new tooling in easily and everything else that's involved in SMED, preparing the tooling separately and all this sort of stuff. But the main one that I see time and time again in the food industry is to make your processes easier to clean by modifying the machine slightly and making sure that they are easier to clean, and then give people better tooling. The best solutions will come if you stop a process and ask the people there, you give them 2 hours and say, hey, think about it, Tell us what you'd like to have changed on this machine to make it easier to clean. The people who do the cleaning, right? What can we do? If we bring you tooling, if we modify this, if we do that, you tell us how can we make this thing easy to clean. Provoke that discussion and say, okay, at the moment it's taking you 10 minutes. Can you tell me how you could do it in 1 minute? So there's a lot to be done there because people haven't done it, because people haven't been asking the people who do the cleaning how to do it. And it's also a really good way to motivate people. Anyway, that's it. Okay, well, thank you very much, all of you. I see everybody's stayed with me, so thank you for your curiosity and interest. Have a great day, and don't forget to ask the people on your production lines what they could do to improve performance. Have a nice day. Bye bye.